Hey, everybody, welcome. It's time for another edition of Talking Hockey. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production presented by Humanica Media. Here we are. It's the 2018 Stanley Cup playoffs, and we are down to the Final Four. And believe it or not, this is how fast life comes at you sometimes. Last year, now we're down to these four teams. Two of the teams didn't even make the playoffs last year. One team was eliminated early last year, and the other team, they didn't even exist last year, but here we are. We're going to break it down. As you know, I don't work alone here. I do enlist the help of only the very, very best. So let me bring in the main man from somewhere up there in Eastern Canada, the man some of you may follow on Twitter already at the Schwartz 5454. That's the SCHWARTZ 5454. A lot of goaltending wisdom. The man with the lightning glove hand. Here he is, everybody. Lightning Lonnie Schwartz.
Oh my God. I'm still taken aback by the performance we just saw in Nashville tonight. Thank you for the wonderful introduction again, by the way. I normally I'm a little more exuberant, but I'm a little withdrawn because as a goalie coach,
right,
I'm watching this game. Like when I'm not talking hockey with you, Charles, I'm coaching goalies. And before we even talk series, we got to address Dumbo's ears in the room here. Because like those two goals in a game 7 in your home rink, arguably the hardest rink to play in outside of Winnipeg. Like it's either Winnipeg or Nashville. Pick your poison for worst rink to play in terms of the crowd just wanting to absolutely eat you alive with noise. And that goal that Tyler Myers scores, everybody's going to look at that and say, and rightfully, I might add, and you know me, I'm a goalie. I'm going to give the goalie 99.9% benefit of the doubt, especially in the show. These are the best goaltenders in the world. We have Vezina Trophy goaltending at both ends in Hellebuck and Rinne. And then Rinne lets in that goal from Tyler Myers below the goal line. And what you see being employed there, and this is where I'll try and get as friendly as I can get. This is theater of the mind now. We are entering old school radio. I feel like we should have a 50s kind of jingle live band in the background making some sort of mysterious noise because
paint that word's eye view, man. Paint that word's eye view. Paint the picture.
So when you're watching what Pekka Rinne and every goaltender does when they lock in what looks like a butterfly on the post with one leg locked in towards the post and the other slightly elevated near the goal line is referred to as the RVH, reverse vertical horizontal. And when you see goalies lock in that position, typically speaking, you're going to see them lock in the toe bridge position. The toe bridge exists between the tip of your skate blade and the bridge of the goalie pad, right? So there's that little gap between the pad and the skate where you'll see goalies that either have skate lace, some type of lacing that holds the pad towards the skate. There's only a couple that don't have that. Anyway, that's the gap. And that's where you actually land on the post if you're taught that technique. That provides a better seal. That did not happen today for Pekka Rinne. He landed on his skate blade and didn't make an adjustment. And from the view I initially saw, I'm like, oh my God, he didn't lock. And that's why it went in. That's why there was an even bigger gap. And then I saw another angle because the first angle was from inside the net. Then I saw another camera's view where his stick is what actually redirected the puck in the net. Now, this is where we say, do we fix a nail with a screwdriver? Probably not the best. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a contractor by trade here, but I'm pretty confident you don't fix nail with a screwdriver. So when Pekka Rinne, locks into this position, the reverse VH, he's got to stick, first of all, in a position that it should never be in when the puck is where it is, more towards the boards in the corner. You want to usually use this technique when the puck is in the trapezoid area, the Brodeur punishment zone, as we've come to sort of know over the years. So that position, the reverse VH, is typically used for wraparounds or pushes off into butterfly for quick passes in front in the red zone, deep in the slot. None of that was happening in this situation. So you're going to say, Lonnie, this is that 0.1% where I can't believe it. I'm hearing this from a technical standpoint, from a judgment standpoint, from a selection standpoint. It was just, we are talking catastrophic 3 Mile Island failure.
And after 3 Mile Island, I think on the second goal, he went Chernobyl.
Oh, or you can say Chernobyl the first, and for a follow-up, it was 3 Mile Island, because the same technique I just explained was being used in the proper sequence. Okay, Paul Stastny, he's coming tight, right? You're locking in, makes the initial save, or looks to be, and then he leaves the seal. He leaves his post. And Stastny's like, thanks very much.
Not only that, but Stastny was covered at that point. The only thing he can do is basically, for golfers out there, the equivalent of a sand wedge, and just try to chip it up toward the net. Going near post was the only place Stastny, from where he was, being covered as he was, could possibly have gone.
Yeah, it amazed me that he came off so quickly. And that's where you want that seal, that immediacy of the seal that you have between your arm and the post, the pad and the post, to use this technique. Okay, so there's the tool being used at least at the right time. And then he's like, but you know what? I'm just going to let go now. You haven't finished the job. You know, I'm trying to use the best theater of the mind I can here. It just drove me insane. And then, as being pointed out here, we have Hockey Night in Canada up here, obviously, covering the broadcast, NBC in your neck of the woods in all likelihood. And you're watching that, and at least what we were showing up here is Rinne knew he was done. He knew he was going to get pulled after that second goal. And it's the third time he's been pulled in the series, because he knew right there the momentum that the team needed to get back in the game was going to be from him getting pulled, and no other means necessary. And they were bad goals. It wasn't one of those where the team let him down. He knew it. And it's an awful feeling. This is the compassion part that you understand as a goaltender in important situations. While it is a team game, you're very much an individual there, and you know that what you just did is precisely, without any excuse, that you put your team in this predicament. And I feel for the guy. Like, I've met Pekka Rinne. He's an incredibly nice guy. He's up for the Vezina this year. You know, he had a great regular season. But as we talked about this off air before we hit record, in the playoffs, he just loses a gear.
Right. And that was the thing we talked about. One thing, I always saw him as kind of the equivalent of Ryan Miller. Ryan Miller, the American goaltender, who, Miller was good and borderline great, but he just did not necessarily bring his A game in the playoffs. And that was my knock against Pekka Rinne all the way up until last season, when they broke through and made it to the Cup final, and he was solid the whole way through. And now it looks like really he regressed. When the chips were down, you could see he wasn't really, that great this year. And you got to wonder about both of those teams. If we look at the teams who were the combatants in the Cup final last year, with Nashville now, where do they go? And also, if we jump over to Pittsburgh and what happened with them, you have to wonder, with Pittsburgh, even with the firepower they have, with Sidney Crosby, with Evgeny Malkin, with Phil Kessel, with Patrick Hornquist, the reason they got through these playoffs even as far as they did was because Jake Gensel, of all people, comes through with 10 goals in 12 games. Without him somehow, I don't know, capturing that lightning in a bottle, which he had, what happens with Pittsburgh this year? So two teams that were on top of the mountain, they've suddenly fallen, and you got to think both of them are going to be looking for answers in the offseason.
Well, if we stick on the Western Conference side right now, you look at the Predators, and the question does arise. Do you trade Pekka Rinne? He's got a pretty hefty contract. He's north of $7 million a season, so it's not going to be easy to swallow in terms of contract. Again, you're going to look at a team maybe like Philly who's going to go, maybe this is going to be the guy. Lucky number 13. Because right away, you've got a default to Philly. Like, that's the default. Right? It's like it's if you're driving manual, you're at the light, you're going first gear. It's not going second or third. No, Philly's first gear on goaltending. Every year you're going to go, well, I got to go into first. So can Philly afford it? That remains to be seen. And I don't want to get too into the conversation because like then it's one of those situations in Vegas. Let's say he wins the Vezina and then it's like that classic awkward. I just really crapped the bed in the playoffs. Oh, and I'm the subject of trade talks. Thanks for the award. I'm going to go back to Finland and cry in 2 languages, and just like, I almost want to just give it a 24 hours, a moratorium on poor Pekka, and I don't mean that, put a hashtag on it and make it, some sort of ridiculous Michael Jordan meme or something. The guy's a great guy. He's obviously a great competitor. But, as we both pointed out, at the worst possible time, he's not upping his game to help his team achieve the ultimate goal here, and that's winning the Stanley Cup. So Winnipeg had a great game. Almost any other team you could say that Nashville would have had a shot. I mean, Philip Forsberg was kept quiet. PK got the only goal. PK Subban getting the only goal in the game.
And that was on a power play.
Yeah. And
so no even strength goals. They lose 5-1. So let's get right down to it.
Yeah.
They got shellacked.
Yeah. They got
whacked.
Yeah. They were
Winnipeg Jets.
They contained the most dynamic forward in Philip Forsberg, without question. They managed to overall effectively shut down the offensive machine that was the defensive core for the Nashville Predators. Overall, Roman Josi had a very quiet series. I was a little disappointed he didn't get on the score sheet more, but they had big names coming up. Paul Stastny had 2 goals today. Mark Scheifele with that rocket on a one-timer. Big goals from big names, and Patrick Laine hasn't even really woken up yet. Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's true. He's been fairly invisible.
Yeah,
he really has.
Can you imagine if Patrick Laine all of a sudden decides, oh yeah, I'm Patrick Laine. I know how to score goals. And he starts scoring goals again. Kyle Connor, who's a very good rookie, he's been contributing offensively. Winnipeg, hats off to them. Like they really, and Dustin Byfuglien, obviously, big buff, being the very cornerstone of that defense and earning every penny of that contract. People are like, really, you're going to spend that kind of money on Byfuglien? He's like, yeah, just you know what? You get free tickets to the gun show because I'm just going to flex him every game. But the guy's an animal out there. I absolutely love watching Dustin Byfuglien play. He ragdolls 2 players at a time. He's just all business out there. I love a player like that. So Dustin Byfuglien and the rest of that defense just doing everything to just keep easy shots. Then in the third period, I didn't see a lot of extra pressure in the third. Winnipeg having a record themselves, 7-0, now 8-0 after leading after 2 periods. And in the regular season, after leading after 2, 42-1-1. So when we were talking on Facebook through the game, because we're sending messages, Charles and I don't just, we're not just like, all right, we're going to do this. And then we just hang out.
Right.
It's not like some pseudo friendship and quasi phony knowing each other. No, we talk hockey a lot. and we're there and we're talking about the goals getting scored and what's going on, and just, you know, Winnipeg is just wow. And now talk about goaltending. They're going up against the Golden Knights. Marc-Andre Fleury is playing like I've never seen him play. And he's a long season veteran at this point. Well over. I'm almost at a loss because you almost see regression. But he's coming up huge when it matters in the playoffs, and something that which we'll touch on a little bit more on the Eastern Conference side. His old former team there, Matt Murray, not exactly rising to the task against Washington. I just gave credit to Winnipeg's shutdown defense, right? We can rewind that.
Yes, you did. You did. Absolutely. But
how about Vegas? Like the relentless forecheck that team has, line after line after line. It's just incredible to watch in their end, the suppression, the total dominance in the defensive zone, offensive zone. It's really going to be incredible hockey to watch.
Yeah, this is the classic, as I like to call it, the irresistible versus the immovable object type of a thing. And I would say Winnipeg, the one thing for them is going to be, which I saw them just to have a few lulls in the series against Nashville, they're going to have to bring 100% energy every single game. That is one thing. As we look at Vegas, that's the one thing they do, and that is their strength. And in that Vegas series, Vegas eliminates San Jose without really too much trouble. San Jose also in a little bit of flux and change. What's going to happen with Joe Thornton? Honestly, I think even if Thornton had been able to play, I don't think he would have made a difference because of the overall team speed that Vegas has. And Thornton, he's a big guy, likes to lug the biscuit, but I think I don't want to say would have skated circles around him, but trying to keep up with Vegas is no easy task. So we got the four goaltenders. You talk about Fleury, you talk about Connor Hellebuck, who is a Vezina Trophy finalist. In the East, we got Vasilevsky for Tampa Bay, who's a Vezina Trophy finalist, against Braden Holtby, who was a finalist last year. So it's great matchups all around. Yes, that's true. That's true. So
like goaltending has been a real treat. Like we didn't even give enough credit to Connor Hellebuck. Connor Hellebuck's been incredible in this playoff run as well. And overall, that is, he did falter a couple of times, but I mean, really, he bounced back so incredibly well. Winnipeg, Vegas, like you said, it didn't even look. They had that one game where Martin Jones shut him out 4-0, and then you think you can match that blueprint? No, they just come back and go, hey, that's the anomaly, and it really is. I'm excited for this series. I don't even know how to predict this series. I mean, and the odds of Vegas being where they are right now, being not just in NHL history, they're the single greatest expansion franchise in professional sports. It is honestly, like Vegas is going to the final. As much as I want Winnipeg to go.
You got Winnipeg, the team that missed the playoffs last year versus the team that did not exist last year. So, and Winnipeg for the first time in franchise history making it to this point. Yes,
the playoffs. So there's a lot of history in this series, a lot, and it's just at this point, how do you bet against Vegas? How? You can't. My buddy and I, we had a good day today. We were hanging out. We were talking a lot of hockey as well because, I mean, come on, we're expecting the best hockey that you're going to watch. And we were discussing this. And Vegas being designed the way they are is essentially it's 3 lines of second line players.
Right.
Their success. And yeah, they'll have and their fourth line is like a third line. So they can attack you with so many different options offensively, but because a second line also isn't quite as, say, offensively potent as your first, naturally speaking. But if you're the uninitiated, your first line, here's your hint when you want to sound smart. Your first line is your best line. When they shorten the bench, it means the first two lines are playing. Sorry, got to get lingo down. It's not just Snoop doing lingo, okay? We can talk hockey lingo too, right? Are we allowed?
We are, yes, sir.
Okay.
Preach, brother, preach.
Okay, I just got to make sure because, look, Snoop's doing a great job. I want to know. I want to know if we can discuss lingo. But anyhow.
So on the record. Going Vegas, correct?
I mean, I'd love to. And speaking of on the record, I need to clear the air with this right now. This is important. This was actually a really good segue. So a little while back, I was on YouTube and I had mentioned that I don't think Winnipeg's going to last a decade in the National Hockey League. And I said I'd eat my words if I was wrong. And I know it's a little premature because it hasn't quite been a decade yet, but I think suffice to say, unless something catastrophic happens and the entire province of Manitoba is swallowed up into Hudson's Bay, I don't know. But if that doesn't happen, and it likely won't, I'm eating my words. You're going to last more than a decade as a franchise. You've reached heights that your franchise has never seen before in any iteration. So congratulations. No matter what happens, you're going to get a great finalist in the Stanley Cup from the Western Conference. But I can't see myself betting against Vegas. I can't.
Hey, I'm with you there. I'm with you. I think, I'm going with this, the goaltending matchup is going to be fantastic. I like the way Fleury has gone. But like you said, Vegas, to me, the way that they roll lines and just keep on coming at you, I think it's going to be a bit too much for Winnipeg because Winnipeg, they do have lulls. They do. They have lulls. They have times when they'll go a few minutes not playing their best hockey. Those are the times I think Vegas is going to take advantage. And I look at this being probably about a 6-game series. I think if I were to say like I said, you either think a series is going to go 4 or 5, 5 or 6, 6 or 7. I think it's going to go 5 or 6. I don't think Winnipeg can extend them to 7 games.
No,
I really don't think that. I'm saying a 5 or 6 game series. And if Winnipeg isn't careful, if they go down, they lose the first 2 home games, even one of the first 2, it's going to be rough because Vegas has a tough building to play in too. Look, evidenced by their regular season record and, well, even in the playoffs. So great series. I'm going Vegas in 5 or 6 games, though, and Vegas continues to be the story of not only the National Hockey League, but the sporting world here in the USA and in Canada.
How can you ignore it? It's just one of the most incredible stories. You want to avoid cliche. That's like we talk hockey, you and I, and it's not the most cliched hockey talk you're going to hear, and that's a refreshing thing. That's a good thing. But here you are literally witnessing history in your time where you could do a movie about this. If they win, okay, I'm just being absurd here. If they win the Stanley Cup, you make a movie out of that. And in 20 years from now, so long as nobody with the hot button finger decides to press that hot button and the world goes in a handbasket, you're going to watch that movie and go, I was alive when they got that expansion team. I remember when that happened. And people would be like, really? Was it as exciting and accurate? And you're like, you know what? It was as ridiculous and unforeseen as they made it look. And it really is. It defies all logic and reason to think that they would be this successful. You knew they were going to be good. You knew the NHL wouldn't let this long-term engagement fail, right? Because we go back to the NHL awards. That's where we met.
2009.
Yeah, and that's been going on for the better part of a decade. That's a courtship. That's long-term grooming. That's saying, honey, not only do I want to date you, I want to date you for a long time before we even get engaged. And then I really want to prove that marriage is I want to make sure that your mom and dad didn't throw down $500 million for nothing on this wedding. Okay. I really want to make sure that the cake is good.
Well, I remember I interviewed when they were awarded the franchise a couple of years ago. I interviewed Bill Foley. I was there. I've covered the awards every year because it's easy drive for me out to Vegas. And he said, you guys, he says, everyone will see I'm going to be a good owner. And hey, so far, so good. So hats off to Mr. Foley. Hats off to McVie, the GM, and hats off to Gerard Gallant for pulling that team together and getting all those fresh faces, guys who they're veterans, but had never played together before, and molding them into a cohesive unit. And here we have today, and they're at the conference final. So we're clear on the West. Shall we jump over to the East, my brother?
We may as well, because, wow, we were talking about this when we were doing our preview for the Eastern side of things and going, mathematically speaking, will our heart dictate that it will be right and say Washington will be Pittsburgh? And both of us said, no, we'll listen to our head, forget the heart, emotion be damned, who cares about it? No, it's not going to happen. And we were both, well, we were both
wrong. Head wrong.
We
were head wrong.
Yeah, we should have listened to our heart this time. We should have said, you know what, our heart will go on with Ovechkin and the Deadpool sequel, because Celine Dion is singing for the Deadpool sequel, I might add. Should we get some money for that, by the way? Free promo?
I think so. But you know what? The other thing was when Washington eliminates Pittsburgh, they do it without Nicholas Backstrom and without Tom Wilson. And they still go in there. And a depleted Washington team winning a critical game, it's bad enough or hard enough for a fully healthy Washington team to win a critical game in the playoffs. A depleted Washington squad just takes care of Pittsburgh just like that. So have they finally gotten in? We're talking about, hey, right here, I was saying what they need to do is, for whatever reason, they need to move on somehow from this current era with Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and Backstrom. Either get rid of Kuznetsov and Backstrom and change the culture, or send Ovi packing, one of the other two, because this thing is never going to work. And lo and behold, they've finally done something, and their reward, they get to face the Tampa Bay Lightning.
And who scored the OT winner? None other than the goofy Sully himself.
Right.
Evgeny Kuznetsov. Like,
the bird, the Birdman.
The right time. Yeah. I was steaming over that guy. Just stupid plays. And I'm not preaching like, I made the phone call to Washington and said, hey, Washington, can you put me on the phone with Kuznetsov? I got to give him a couple of, stern.
Yeah, there's times when we would all much rather watch his sister play professional tennis, Svetlana Kuznetsov, than watch Kuznetsova, watch her play, than watching him play hockey.
Oh my God.
Maybe she called him. Maybe Sis called him and said, hey, bro, you gotta do it.
Whatever was said to Yevgeny Kuznetsov to get him to play a lot smarter offensively, and then obviously score the biggest goal of his career, that person who whispered in his ear deserves some degree of credit, because again, it doesn't always fall on Ovechkin, although he did score some timely goals in the series against Pittsburgh as well.
Yes.
It's always Ovi time. And if there's one player in the league that I couldn't be happier for, it's Alexander Ovechkin, because he's finally making it deep in the playoffs. They're in the conference final now. And as you just pointed out, they're playing against Tampa. They did it without some key components in their lineups. So the one guy I did want to discuss, and you mentioned him earlier, is Braden Holtby. Let's not forget, he didn't win a game since December. It was ridiculous. Philip Grubauer took the reins.
Right.
It was his team. You got the first two games at home with Grubauer in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he loses both. He was less than spectacular, and who steps in? That's mental toughness. You want to ask yourself why people say the equation is 90% mental, 10% physical. Well, I mean, in a very literal sense, mentally, you're telling your body what to do. It's just as a matter of how quick your body executes. And that's what makes a goaltender so special when you're a guy like Braden Holtby. Not
Absolutely.
only are you able to allow yourself to do that physically, execute physically so well consistently, but that mental toughness, that mental game that everybody talks about as well is that he came in going, all right, I lost the job. I got the job back. What's my job now? Stop the puck. One at a time. Stop the puck. It's one of the greatest mantras I've ever heard in goaltending is the puck doesn't care about the circumstance. It doesn't know it's the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a puck. So what's my job is to stop that thing and have the relationship solely with that and make it about as emotionally detached as possible. And so that's something that he does remarkably well. And again, I mentioned it on a previous podcast. I looked back at his career more carefully, and last year was the anomaly. It never really fell on him before, at least the lackluster performances of his team in front of him. It wasn't on Holtby. And now his team is, as a team, performing in front of him. Tampa's next, and as happy as I am for Ovechkin, and I am happy. If you could see here, I'll give a big old smile. I'm really happy.
Show those pearly whites. But hey, Tampa.
Oh, the orthodontics just spot on. Thank you, Dr. Shapiro. You did a great job.
But Tampa Bay Lightning, they are, they've been building toward this, I think, ever since 2015, and still a lot of great players. And I think we've got a critical mass situation happening there in Tampa. Not a whole lot of analysis even needs to be done. Tampa did what we expected them to do against Boston. They dispatched them, and aside from one game where they really laid an egg out there, they dispatched Boston with relative ease. Speaking of the task at hand, relative ease, not ease, relative ease.
I was shocked at how well they handled the Boston Bruins. But as I was saying about Ovechkin, and I'm happy for him, I truly am. He's up against my man, who just celebrated his 53rd birthday. A man who is the architect of this hockey club known as the Tampa Bay Lightning. His name is Stephen Gregory Yzerman. And I can't root against Stevie Y. So let's get this out of the way right now. As much as my heart might have a small piece for Ovi, and there is, the overwhelming majority of that heart and mind, body, soul, and every chakra and multi-theist and monotheist religious experience I can muster is devoted to Stevie Y. So I'm picking Tampa to go ahead. I have to. I can't vote against Stevie.
Do you see this a 4 or 5, a 5 or 6, or a 6 or 7? What do you think?
I really do think Washington's going to give them a good run. I do, because their offense is clicking. But I can't see it going 7. So we're probably like 5 or 6. I can't see it being as easy as Boston. Like I said, it was just, to me, it was shocking. Like, wait.
With Boston, what I saw was one thing we had talked about, and that is with the whole thing of, with Tuukka Rask, maybe it's a Finnish goalie thing. I don't know. But with Tuukka, you're just thinking sometimes, and with all the great things that he does, and sometimes it's like, what exactly were you reaching for on that one?
And
the puck was coming right to you. It was waving at you, Tuukka. Here I come. Block me, catch me, let me hit your chest. That's all I want you to do. And he turns it into an adventure.
Yeah, it's just inopportune goaltending from elite level goaltenders. We're talking about a Vezina Trophy winner.
Right.
And then it's just, I think ultimately what happens in a series like that is, while Toronto was young and some of their guys weren't awake, Austin Matthews never really woke up against Boston.
No.
Steve Stamkos woke up against Boston. and he got some timely goals that helped his confidence, but also contributed to the team's overall success. And that's what you want to get out of one of the most lethal scorers in NHL history. And yes, I mean it when I say NHL history, because over his career, at least over the last 5 years, there's only really one name that has been more proficient at scoring goals. And that guy's name is Alexander Ovechkin. So
Absolutely.
Full credit due to Stamkos. And the team, Braden Point, it's very interesting. I was talking about Braden Point with some people at the local arena, because obviously hockey is just all year round here in Canada. And he went from being an average skater to being nearly as fast as Connor McDavid. Let that sink in for a second. A guy who was once considered an average skater is now in a similar stratosphere, not the same, because, I mean, Connor McDavid is unbelievable.
Right.
For the uninitiated, he is the generational talent that is the cornerstone of the Edmonton Oilers franchise. The Art Ross winner, once again. So if you're not familiar, he's a pretty good hockey player and very, very fast. For Braden Point to have improved his game and edge work to get to that level is something to behold. Because when you reach that level of the National Hockey League, obviously you've done something right. But then to keep going back and retraining and understanding where your shortcomings might be and improve on those, and just to see where he's come to, it's really actually something worth noting. So I thought that was important. I talk enough about goaltending, but to give full credit to a skater for working on edge work, I do believe he enlisted, Barb Underhill. And Barb Underhill is a figure skating coach. And you're going to sit there and laugh. Okay? If you're this hardcore hockey guy, you're going to sit there, you're going to laugh, and you're going to, are you really for real? Figure skating, I'm going to put this out there right now. The best skaters in the world are figure skaters.
Well, you know what? This goes back. We can take this all the way back. I remember when this started in the 70s was Laura Stamm working with the New York Islanders. And that was kind of a revolutionary thing. And her teaching them to use their edges more proficiently. And, 4 straight Stanley Cups later, we see that it's like, okay, there is something to that. And that's the good thing about those revolutionary things. And it goes going forward, and it just changes the way the game is played. And we wind up with skaters from the 70s. Then you see the explosion in the 80s, skating techniques just being a lot better, more explosive. And here we're coming forward into this new generation.
You know what? And you bringing up Laura Stamm I'm like, whoa, because Laura, I know I'm in a bunker in a secret location in Eastern Canada. So I might give something away here by saying this, but at the local barns, you see her flyers around. So she's local. And she's teaching here near my secret bunker. So I can tell you she's still out there teaching. And it's
tell her Sea Dog says hello, and gave her props on my show. And even though I was born and raised in Southern Cal, I know all about her, and I got mad respect for my homegirl.
And here, I'm going to go to your neck of the woods with this and go even further back with the connection of figure skating to hockey. So you can't heave your chest out and look down on figure skating, because hockey wouldn't have one of its most iconic tools if it was not for figure skating in California, and that would be the Zamboni. Wasn't invented for hockey. It was invented for figure skating in California to get the ice surface all cleaned up for the figure skaters a lot quicker.
And when we're done here, I think I'm going to go and put on The Cutting Edge. I have the DVD somewhere, so, And in fact, in that 2009, when I met you, I not only met Pekka Rinne, but I also met D.B. Sweeney in the club there, So, hey, Cutting Edge, figure skating, we've covered the full gamut here, and we're both picking, we see it as Vegas versus Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. So, hey, remember, everybody, follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. Follow Lonnie on Twitter at The Schwartz 5454. That's the SCHWARTZ 5-4-5-4. Lonnie, we got to go ahead and get out of here. Got some things to do, got places to go. The conference finals are starting tomorrow. Right now, we're shooting the show right before Tampa and Washington will kick things off on Friday night. So final words for the audience before we sign off here, homeboy?
Yeah, it's going to be some of the best hockey. It might even be better hockey than what you're going to see in the Stanley Cup final itself, because you've got 4 incredible hockey teams facing off against each other. You've got great goaltending no matter where you're looking. And as a goalie coach, it's obviously something I'm going to relish, because you've got former Vezina Trophy winners, Vezina Trophy candidates, Stanley Cup champions, like Marc-Andre Fleury on the resurgence of a career, on the cusp of a story that is bigger than the game itself. It is all of sports, like so many storylines. If I'm putting on my Hollywood producer cap, if I'm going to put a marketing campaign together, I'm going to throw hundreds of millions of dollars and say, okay, put something together for me. I could not put together better storylines than what you're going to get here. It's incredible. You've got Ovechkin finally getting somewhere. You got the Winnipeg Jets franchise history. You've got sports history with the Vegas Golden Knights being where they are. And then, of course, my personal bias, Steve Yzerman presiding over all, going, it doesn't matter what everyone's master plan is. Are you Steve Yzerman? No, I'm Steve Yzerman. And we're going to win a Stanley Cup. And that's the bottom line. I don't care what Steve Austin says, but Steve Yzerman says so.
And one other thing was, Canada has been looking to get back, to win the Cup since 1993. And who is it? I think it's just so poetic that Manitoba, really, the province which is the runt of the litter, the ones carrying your nation possibly to the promised land. Oh. God bless Manitoba,
Oh, I mean, yeah, Prince Edward Island might be the runt in size, but they're not always the brunt end of the jokes like Manitoba is. Everybody's like, hey, did you hear about Manitoba? And they're like, oh, if you're not familiar with Canadian geography, Manitoba is an interesting place that we could probably tell a few tales of if it was inside geography. But outside of that, it's inside sports. We're talking hockey, and yes. Our nation, Canada, is being represented by Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Home of Chris Jericho.
The meek shall inherit the earth, it says in the good book. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. That's Lonnie Schwartz. For Mr. Schwartz, remember, this is the show Talking Hockey, an inside sports production. We'll be with you every week through the Stanley Cup final. Thank you for listening. We'll see everybody next time.